I'm a whole person, you're a whole person, but why is Congress only trying to put you 70% back to whole in a second stimulus package? Hey everybody, this is LA Late with the debut of Mornings on LA Late, in which we go over the second stimulus package and really what everyone is talking about at the water cooler overnight. The big topic, which you're getting right to right now, is the inability of Congress to really put citizens back at whole in this pandemic. Overnight, we saw great, shocking details about what is going on with Congress. Whether it's unemployment, they want to put you back at 70%. Stimulus, they want to give you 2 or 4 months of checks when you've been on lockdown, or 2 or 6 months if you struggled during this pandemic. Rent assistance, they want to give you rent assistance after you're evicted. Hazard pay, they don't want you to work they want you to work in a hazardous environment and not compensate you for it. Stimulus, they want to give you potentially half of a check if you're a dependent. And if you're an adult dependent, they maybe don't even want to give you a single check. What's going on, Congress? This is Morning on a LA Late, and let's get right to it. Across the board with second stimulus proposals in the last few hours, we have seen a consistent discourse in which members of Congress simply do not want to put you back at whole. Of course, my response is maybe we should pay Mitch McConnell only 50% of his salary. How would he like that? When we talk about unemployment benefits being extended of FPUC this week, Mitch McConnell and Steve Mnuchin said, you know what? We don't want to pay 100% of unemployment benefits. We'll just pay you 70% of unemployment benefits. Well, how about the employer? Is the employer only doing 7% of the work? And who woke up and said that Americans should only be compensated for 70% of their unemployment benefits instead of 100% of unemployment benefits? American citizens have worked hard before the pandemic and during the pandemic, and under no understanding of American law or federal law, are Americans supposed to be compensated for unemployment benefits at a reduced rate because Steve Mnuchin wants to give you a reduced rate? Are members of the Trump administration supposed to be compensated at 70% of their employment rate? Stimulus checks made viewers very irate yesterday when we learned ostensibly that we may go into September having received at most 2 stimulus checks for 4 months of lockdown, or 2 stimulus checks for 6 months of struggling during this pandemic. Again, we're being cheated. What's going on, Congress? The pandemic ravaged this country and put America on lockdown in the month of March, April, and May across almost all states. So that was, well, and also June in some states as well. And so most of us during the first wave of the pandemic and the second wave have been on lockdown at least 3 to 4 months. But what does Congress want to give you? A check for 2 months. Okay, how about the other months, Congress? Why aren't you making us whole? If you look at the months of struggle that we have gone through struggles on this pandemic from March all the way now, and as we come into August. 6 months of struggle. Why are we getting 2 months of checks and not 6 months of checks? We've been struggling here for 6 months. Again, no explanation. And this comes from both Democrats who want to give you 1 check while you've been struggling for months, and Republicans who simply just, apparently think 1 check is sufficient. Steve Mnuchin most famously once said that American could survive for several months on one $1,200 check. Again, not making America whole. But the continuation of that theme passes into hazard pay. You're supposed to work as an essential worker during a pandemic, and you're not supposed to be compensated additional money to work in a hazardous environment. Why are the Republicans not willing to do anything about hazard pay? And the Democrats have really dragged their feet in getting the hazard pay bill passed. But rent eviction is perhaps the worst example of Congress not making you whole. The Democrats want to give you a rent moratorium and rent eviction and rent grant program, but they wanted to pass in August after you've been evicted. Who has a grant program after you're evicted? Who has a rent eviction moratorium program after you're evicted? It serves no purpose. Ultimately, it sounds like someone trying to pass a bill to make themselves look good, but doesn't do anything. The Republicans, on the other hand, have said nothing about rent assistance. Finally, stimulus checks have really made viewers irate in the last 24 hours. We really don't know where the Republicans are landing, and we don't know why the Democrats messes up the first round. If you recall, the first stimulus package was passed, and ultimately when it was finished, Democrats and Republicans said, we made a mistake. We forgot to give a stimulus check to dependents 17 years of age. Okay, you again did not leave them whole. So anyone who was 17 years or older was screwed out of a first stimulus check the first round, and now we're going to the second stimulus package round, and what's going on again? There are now indications that Republicans don't want to perhaps give a second stimulus check to people who are 17 years of older. Why are we leaving out half of the American population? And then there's the amount. The first stimulus package, for reasons really unclear, said we're going to give a stimulus check to people who are dependents 17 years or younger at $500, not $1,200. So is a 16-year-old only worth $500 of a stimulus package compared to $1,200? Who woke up and decided they're worth less than half of a person? And now, with the second round of stimulus packages up for debate, the Republicans seem to perhaps be suggesting, but we really don't know, is that they perhaps only want to again pay $500 to children dependents, not $1,200. Why is there a consistent discourse between Republicans and Democrats this Saturday morning, as I sit here and try to ponder this with you, about not making Americans whole? You have done your service to this country. You have worked. You have paid your taxes. You've been law-abiding citizens, whether you're on SSDI, SSI, or you're veterans, or you're disabled, or you're retired. Why can you not be made whole by members of Congress? The comments that are coming out this morning from Saturday Morning News, where Republicans and Democrats are talking about this, are case in point exactly what I'm talking about. They say they don't want to make people whole. When asked about this subject, Steve Mnuchin, who's the Treasury Secretary to Donald Trump, said, you know what, we think that it's best to put people at 70% of unemployment in a second round of stimulus packages. We're not going to extend FPC at 100%. We think people's unemployment benefits should only be paid at 70%. Hello, why? Excuse me, what is the reason for it? Now, Steve Mnuchin comes back and says, well, we're paying people too much money. Okay, how about you pay people 100% of their unemployment benefits? They worked 100% of their job. They're entitled to 100% of their benefits. It reminds me of what we talked about when we're talking about unemployment benefits, of escalated benefits. If you recall, if you made over $30,000 a year last year, you qualify for escalated benefits, which could raise your weekly benefits from about $100, $160 a week to $300, $400 a week. So under Steve Mnuchin's theory, do we not pay escalated benefits as well? That we just sort of pay you a little bit less because we don't feel like giving you a lot of money. What's going on here? 70% of a worker's income. We're going to extend it on a basis of wage. We aren't going to extend it on a basis of wage replaces. It's about 70% of wage replacement. Ultimately, perhaps Steve Mnuchin should consider working on 70% of his salary. Nancy Pelosi said that the situation this weekend is that people are in dire straits and they're not being put back to whole. This weekend, this is a comment minutes ago from Nancy Pelosi, who's this House Speaker and also a Democrat, says this weekend millions of Americans will lose their unemployment insurance. Well, actually, they've already lost it. Will be at risk of being evicted from their homes. In fact, they've already have, and could be laid off by state and local government. And there's only one reason: Republicans have been dithering for months while Americans' crisis deepens. I don't agree that there's only one reason. There's also a reason that's a Democratic reason, and it's Nancy Pelosi's reason. The first stimulus package, which Nancy Pelosi put through, called for multiple stimulus checks, a stimulus check for March, April, and May. And Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, both sides of the table, said, you know what, we're not going to make America whole. We're just going to give them one check. And we'll get to the other checks later. We'll take a vacation for now. Nancy and Mitch, why did you not give multiple stimulus checks the first stimulus package round? Most of the viewers of this channel have said that they would have been if they had been made whole back in the spring, if they had gotten a check from March, April, May, they probably would be okay. They would not been a great situation, but they wouldn't be in fear of eviction, losing their home, having their electricity turned off, unable to pay for food and clothing and water right now. If they had gotten all their stimulus checks, which they were owed during the first round. They didn't. So, Nancy, it is not entirely a Republican problem. It's also a Democratic problem. People have not given people their checks that they're owed. We're dealing with the mechanical issues with that, says Mnuchin. Ultimately, Mitch McConnell actually said today, we'll get to this in a couple weeks. In a couple weeks, congressmen are elected to do things quickly, fast, and orderly, not to take vacations, not to belabor things for months. That is not making America whole, getting things weeks later after we've fallen off the financial cliff. We need to make sure our employment insurance is continued, Mitch McConnell. Of course, he said just weeks ago that it was not going to be continued. There's a controversy, however, over whether the provision of the previous manner made people made more money staying at home. There is no controversy about it. You've made the controversy about it. Ultimately, giving too much in benefits, which is really an issue of discussion and an issue of debate, is not a bad thing. But giving people not enough money is a horrible thing. Giving people 70% of what they're owed is outrageous and unverifiable and simply ungrounded in any law or any order or any economic theory. So why are we at 70% of giving people back? These employers are having a hard time getting back to work. The president said, I was against the original decision, but now we're doing it again. They're thinking about doing 70% of the amount. The amount would be the same, but doing a little bit smaller initial amounts. That's the president. Days ago, the president slammed the Democrats for saying that $1,200 was not enough. The president said he was going to give you a lot more than $1,200. Ironically, the economics are worse now than they were then. So when the president said that he was going to give you more than $1,200, more than the Democrats, the economy was in a better situation than it is now. Now it's in a worse situation. Now the American public is struggling more. They're looking to the president, and the president has lied to them, and once again, and is now saying that he's not going to even give you perhaps what he had promised before. And maybe even will give you less than what the Democrats are proposing. Not only is that a flip-flop, but it's going the wrong direction very quickly. It can be done, and it should be done. We are asking states to overhaul their insurance systems in the middle of a pandemic, says Ernie Tedeschi, former economist in the Treasury Department, which they have overloaded. It's too complicated. But you know what's not complicated? The Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has some of the most sophisticated computer systems and the greatest capacity to give you stimulus, to give you insurance benefits, to give you all this money. And ultimately, it can pay the money out to you, but hasn't. The Federal Reserve is finally the worst culprit in not making you whole. Earlier this year, the Federal Reserve allocated billions of dollars for you, the American people, to make you whole. But where is it? It's still at the Federal Reserve. They freely admit they haven't delegated that money out to the American public. Billions and millions of dollars issued in the first coronavirus, first pandemic, first stimulus package are still sitting in the coffers of the Federal Reserve and have not been sent to you. In fact, they've been sent to no one. So what's going on? Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're the Federal Reserve, whether you're the White House, whether you're Steve Mnuchin, whether you're Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell, everyone in Congress currently has a theme, and the theme is not to work, not to make you, America, whole, and really not get to it. Ultimately, what do you think? This is the debut of a new program we're trying out on this channel. If you like it, please hit the like button. Please share it. Please subscribe. We want to see what you think. We're trying to debut a series of new programs, expanding the hours of coverage of this channel, both early morning and late night, to keep you informed, keep you motivated, keep you positive, and keep you really thinking about where America is going and where it should go. Ultimately, we want you to stay positive, stay inspired, stay happy, and really focus on what is good for you, because during this pandemic, we are here with you to keep you through it. As always, keep a smile and stay up late for more.